Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations, you have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up, and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Hello, everybody. This is the MLBeers podcast with your hosts, Andrew Sherman and Phillip Corwin. Phillip, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's an early morning. I've been up for like maybe an hour.
Yeah. It's, we like to do our morning podcast, but I had to wake up at 8:30 to get stuff done for this, which I need a little more sleep.
I maybe should have been a little bit more up a little bit earlier, but I did wake up at 8, saw what time it was, and kind of said "fuck that" and went back to bed.
Hey, you do what you want to do. It's your day off. Time, get some good sleep in. Get a nice sleep in.
I accidentally took a 3-hour nap on the couch yesterday.
Oof. I know how that is sometimes. Not the best, but
I was watching because they put Rogue One on Netflix.
Ooh, hear that, folks? Rogue One's on Netflix now.
And I had hot ham and cheese sandwiches, ramen for lunch.
Man.
So I started at.
And
then I was like, man, I'm really tired, and I just kind of went horizontal on the couch. And I woke up to the last 20 minutes of so I guess it was a 2-hour nap. The last 20 minutes of the movie, had no idea what was going on because I fell asleep within the first 20 minutes.
Oh man, I wish I had that yesterday. But then again, I was at my Springfield Cardinals job. Enjoyed another lovely 3 home run game for the Cardinals, which
Are they playing the Natural still?
Yeah, tonight's the series, the last game of the series today. So I think it's going to be interesting. It might turn into a sweep unless somehow really the Cardinals just completely mess up everything, which they have done before.
I'll say the Naturals had a good team the first half of the season. They won the Texas League, didn't they?
Well, yes, and I think that's where you kind of showed the problem. They won the first half of the Texas League. They kind of don't have to give 2 Fs about it until they have to be in the championship, because you're automatically into the playoff if you win the first division. I mean, the first half of the regular season. So, I mean, it's up in the air. I mean, it could be that, or, nobody's really swinging for the fences. Dinwiddie and DeLuise or whatever, those 2 guys, pretty much the hot bats of the team, but nobody else is doing well.
Yeah, I was going to say Samir Duez or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's our first baseman, and then Donald DeWeese is another guy we got from the Cubs. From that Wade Davis trade.
Gotcha. And it's like DeWeese and DeWez. It's kind of, they kind of almost mix with each other.
Yep.
But what can you do, right?
DeWeese he's an outfielder, right?
I believe so, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think he plays center.
Yes. Because I remember I looked at their transactions yesterday, and a couple of their guys that were really good, like Logan Moon. I remember he was doing well.
Yep.
When he was down in AA, he's up to AAA now. So a lot of their guys that they had in the first half of the season went up to AAA. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them went down because that's how affiliated minor league.
That's how mid-seasons work.
Yeah, that's true. And so
really surprised.
Huh? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm really surprised Samir Duez didn't get called up.
We talked about this off the show. Is that they're probably giving him time to work with AA and then go to AAA and not automatically go up there.
He's a first baseman, and if they sent Logan Moon and they have Ryan O'Hearn up there, there's really not a spot for him.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's probably jam-packed up in AAA. It's kind of the same way with the Memphis Redbirds and the Springfield Cardinals. A lot of the guys could go up there because right now I believe there's like 4 or 5 guys that are currently hitting 280 plus, and they could go up, but it's already a log jam up in AAA. And Magnier Sierra has to go all the way from AA to the majors, without touching AAA at all. So
yeah, it looks like Duez, his average has cooled down a little bit. He's hitting 271, but his BABIP's 307, and he has 12 home runs.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
No, for a 21-year-old and first season in AA, you'll take it.
Exactly. So anyway, speaking about AA, AAA prospects, big names, it is finally trade season in the MLB, and there's already been some crazy transactions, wouldn't you say, Phil?
Yeah, with what the Yankees did for another bullpen arm, or not a bullpen, but for another hitter.
Yeah, and also bullpen arm. Actually, 2 bullpen arms, to be exact. Let me go through the transactions real quick. The first big one was the White Sox giving up Jose Quintana for a couple prospects from the Cubs. Two guys specifically, Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease. Jimenez, a really good outfielder, but of course, looking at the Cubs, when is he going to be able to be out in the outfield for the Cubs? When he's past 30. And then Dylan Cease, for me, it was a little bit questionable in a way because, again, I believe homegrown talent over picking somebody up, but they really needed it. They really needed it. And the Jose Quintana trade, why it's such a good trade for both sides is that the White Sox are rebuilding, the Cubs are keeping their window open for another championship, and Quintana is only 28, I believe, at the moment.
Yep.
And he still has 3 years left after this, or 3 years left on his contract.
Of team control.
Yeah,
so
team control. Which
the
is
Cubs
even better.
aren't necessarily just getting a rental for the half season. They're getting a guy that for the next 2 years after this will be able to contribute to that starting rotation and keep that window open even longer.
Yeah, and, if you really think about it, who's going to be the first guys to go first? You have John Lester and John Lackey. Those 2 guys are going to be going sooner or later, but they moved down a guy. I believe it would be Eddie Butler or Mike Montgomery would go to the bullpen, but it was still a good trade. I have a coworker that's a big White Sox fan and another coworker that's a big Cubs fan. I don't know how I meet these people, Phil, but anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like terrible friends here.
Terrible friends, yeah, exactly. But, talking to both of them, they really think it's, a good trade for both sides. Not only, it's a good trade for for the Cubs, but a bad trade for the White Sox or vice versa. They looked at their teams. They really looked at them and just was like, that's actually a good, good trade-off. And,
yeah,
it was, and I believe, if I didn't say this, it was 4 prospects, but only 2 prospects were kind of were the deal because because of course of block, they were just blocked from going up, progressing forward. Then we have,
but out of that deal, the White Sox ended up promoting Yohan Moncada.
Yeah, Yohan Moncada will be, well, not that deal, but the deal that happened last night, which I'll get to in a moment. But on the 16th, the Oakland Athletics trade Sean Doolittle and Ryan Madson, both relief pitchers, to the Nationals for Blake Treinen and a couple of prospects. The prospects are kind of but Blake Treinen is another if I can talk, is another relief pitcher, so they're kind of trading relief pitchers, with the Oakland Athletics and Nationals, which is kind of a good thing. I mean, Sean Doolittle has done well. Ryan Madson has done well also. I think Doolittle a little more, even because he's a closer. And I know that Matt Albers is probably the only one that's kind of the outlier looking at the bullpen for the Nationals. He only has like a 1 point something ERA, while everybody else is over 4. So it's just like, it's kind of a good thing that they get these guys, really talented relief pitchers, and that was something that the Nationals needed.
Yeah, right now Sean Doolittle, I guess, did he start the year with Toronto?
No, he never started a year with Toronto. He's always been...
It's really weird because Baseball Reference has given me 2017 age 30 team TOT league MLB.
TOT? Did I hear that correctly? I think it might be totals. That's what I'm thinking of.
That makes more sense because he's okay. I was really confused.
Hey, it's early morning. We had to wake up we woke up at weird times. So
I say right now he has a 3.63 ERA, and he's only allowed he's only pitched 22 innings, so not a lot of work on him. He's only allowed 9 runs all season.
Yeah, I mean, again, 22 innings. It's not like some of these guys. When I look at them, they're almost over 40. I mean, Ryan Madson, just looking at the numbers, 39 innings, 39 and 1/3 innings pitched. He has a 2.06 ERA with a FIP of 2.42. His K per 9 is an 8.92 with a walk per 9 of 1.37. And so I mean, this guy, I mean, both of them are really good. I mean, Sean Doolittle, yeah, he has a little bit more of an ERA with a 3.38, like you said, but he can strike out, guys. If you look at his K per 9, he has a 13.08. His walk per 9 is a 0.84, which is just astounding for any type of pitcher, reliever, or starter. So I mean, it's just a good trade, and really, to think about it, I think it will be good for both of them in the long run. I believe Blake Treinen's contract, I think he's still team controlled, through arbitrations and stuff before he actually goes through the free agency process.
Yeah, and so what that gives them, it gives them where they can go, essentially Albers, Madson, Doolittle.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be now with that trade. I think it will just be, it was solidified right there that the relieving core just got fixed. Not necessarily fixed and been through its paces where it's completely fixed, but I guess they put a Band-Aid on it, and now we're just waiting to see if it truly heals, or they'll get an infection and just die in the first round of the playoffs. But
they made the move they needed to make.
Yes, that is true. That is something that they needed to do, and they did it, which is great.
Because on the offensive side, we've talked about it before, the Nationals are good.
Yeah.
They have plenty of guys hitting over 300.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of guys with their batting average of balls in play over 300. They're getting good home run production out of people.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Rendon right now has a better WAR than Bryce Harper. So,
I mean, I don't think you can say really much about that, though, because Rendon is kind of in a year where he kind of needs to prove himself a little bit. He's, had a little bit of a down year. But, I mean, okay, you say he has a better WAR than Bryce Harper, but you can't forget about the numbers. Rendon has a 5 WAR compared to Harper's 4.6.
Oh yeah, no, it's minuscule.
Yeah, it's literally a toss up. And and another thing too, real quick, looking at it, there are 6 players on just the position player side that have a WAR score of over 1, which is I believe is Trey Turner, Michael Taylor, Ryan Zimmerman, Daniel Murphy, Bryce Harper, and Anthony Rendon, which is great. And I mean, again, all those guys named right there besides Turner have plus 110 WRC plus, which is outstanding for any for any type of offense. But I mean, again, you also have other guys like Lynn, Jason Worth, and Adam Eden that are putting up those same numbers too with runs created.
Adam Eaton's out for the year.
Oh, he is? I thought he came back.
He tore his ACL.
When did that happen?
That happened like 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, I know we talked about that, but I feel like
because we talked about it. That's when I mentioned that's when the Royals were kind of being terrible, and we talked about if the Nationals would go after a guy like Lorenzo Cain for the half year.
Mm-hmm. And he still had 107 plate appearances. That's the weird thing about it. I think that's where I was just like going with by plate appearances, not by games.
Yeah.
Sorry for my little rant, folks. That happens. Don't let me get don't let me go on a tangent, right?
Exactly. We'll be here all day.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Yeah, torn ACL. It would be the end of April when that happened. My bad.
Oh,
people.
man.
Yeah, it's been a while. But see, that's how much I pay attention to the Nationals outside of Bryce Harper and Ryan Zimmerman.
But yeah, no, they went and got good production out of Michael Taylor finally. Mm-hmm. So the Nationals they've answered their need.
Yeah, I mean that's
they needed this. They needed 2 bullpen arms, and they just happened to get them from the same team. So.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So they'll be able to keep that stranglehold on the lead in the East.
Oh yeah. There's no way that they can falter now. Well, I shouldn't.
They
say
can't.
That. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I mean you look at the 2011 Boston Red Sox where they had a 99.7% chance of making it into the playoffs, and then the 0.3 was correct, which was really weird to see. But anyway, the next transaction that happened just yesterday before the big blockbuster trade with the Chicago White Sox and the New York Yankees was the Detroit Tigers traded J.D. Martinez to the Diamondbacks for prospect Dewell Lugo and 2 others, I believe, in that trade. Why I talk about Dewell Lugo is because he was a top 8, he was top 10 organizational prospect for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the other guys, I believe, like one of them was in the top 30, and then the other guy was just not in it. But this is kind of a good thing for the Diamondbacks. They needed an outfielder, Yamanis Tomas, currently on the DL. They needed some more They needed probably a little bit more production with the outfield. Let's take a gander real quick.
Yeah, right now their outfield, David Peralta is hitting well with 313. Mm-hmm. AJ Pollock is hitting 280. Mm-hmm. So it looks like JD Martinez will be taking over in left. Mm-hmm. And even before that, Tomas was not hitting that well. He had 8 home runs, 32 RBIs, and only hitting .241.
Yeah, not really good numbers. I mean, I believe he, just looking at it without the on base plus slugging, he probably just had over a 700, maybe into the 800s. But it's not even. But I mean, it's not even that impressive too. I mean, his .464 slugging was great, but that .294 on base percentage really hampers it down a lot. And he only had a weighted runs created plus of 89, where JD Martinez, and I wish I had his numbers up because I'm using
I got his numbers right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
For 2017, he has 200 at bats, 38 runs scored, 61 hits, a .305 batting average, 16 home runs, 39 RBIs. He has a .388 on base percentage, .630 slugging. His OPS is a 1.018. His OPS plus is a 167.
Okay, what's his runs created plus? Weighted runs created plus.
I was on Baseball Reference because Baseball Reference doesn't lag my computer.
That happens. Let me look at it real quick. That's what happens when you're doing a recording, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have everything right in front of you. And of course, there we go. At a 162 weighted runs created plus, so a lot better than Yasmani Tomas. Again, it was a great trade for both teams, and I know we're going to keep on saying that with, we're keeping on saying that, but it is, because if you look at the Detroit Tigers, they are officially going on a rebuild. They gave up JD.
They have to.
Yeah, they have to also. They got older guys, and they got contracts that aren't really team friendly. I mean, Justin Verlander is going to be a Tiger lifer. Miguel Cabrera the same way. He's going to be a Tiger lifer for the rest of his career. I mean, I don't know who else you would be able to trade. Justin Upton, his contract is not really a friendly one either. I believe his per year is over like $15 million.
Yeah.
So it's not really the friendliest of contracts when you really look at these guys. And I just finally got up the numbers real quick. Oh God. Oh, I was totally wrong on that. His average, the next 5 years 5 years, this year included, he is going to get a $22.125 million.
Nobody wants that for Justin Upton.
Yeah. And I mean, he's doing well. That's the other thing, too. So it's like he's doing well to have that type of contract, but he's not able to be tradable because nobody wants that unless the Tigers are going to eat up that contract. Same thing with Justin Verlander. Verlander, like we said, he's on the downslope of his career. He's $28 million through $28 million for this year, next year, and 2019. There is a 2020 option for him, but you're not going to go for something like that. Nor is Miguel Cabrera. Cabrera, I will never see him get traded, but I've heard all the rumors that Verlander was probably going to get traded, but the Tigers would have to eat up these contracts, which wouldn't be a good idea for a team that they want to rebuild. I think they should just go through with those three guys. Jordan Zimmerman is kind of another guy. I've just got his numbers up here real quick. He's not doing so well, but his contract is another one where do you really keep him or just release him and pay off his contract or pay off the buyout? Because you look at Zimmerman real quick, he has an $18 million this year, then he goes to 24 and 18, 25 and 19, and 25 and 19 before he goes back to free agency. And none of these top contracts look good. But this is what happens, and I'm not trying to blame the Tigers for what they were trying to do. Remember 2010, we thought they were going to be, a dynasty. They got Miguel Cabrera. The Justin Verlander was coming in, being a red-hot Cy Young candidate, then winner. Jordan Zimmerman was kind of the same. Well, Jordan Zimmerman, was a later part of it, but they had the talent, and it just didn't happen. So that's kind of the reason why they have those really high contracts.
And one of the guys on that team too that could be traded, that's been a popular name, is Michael Fulmer, because he still has his rookie contract or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's the same kind of conversations as Sonny Gray.
Yeah, and
seeing where either one of those could end up.
Yeah, Michael Fulmer, I was going to say something about that with the Detroit Tigers, but I was just kind of iffy about it because Michael Fulmer would be a really good guy to bring in, just to start the new club. Get rid of, somewhat fade away the old, bring in the new. And that's what I saw with Michael Fulmer. It would be a great pickup, whoever gets him, if the trade does happen. But I don't think it would be a wise idea for the Detroit Tigers. But enough of that. We got one more trade to talk about real quick, and that was last night, late into the night, 11 o'clock in Central Standard Time. The Chicago White Sox trade third baseman Todd Frazier, relief pitcher David Robertson, and relief pitcher Tommy Conley, or Canley, depending on how you want to say it, to the Yankees for relief pitcher Tyler Clipper and prospects Blake Rutherford and Ian Clark. Rutherford, real quick for these prospects, Blake Rutherford was kind of the quote-unquote prospect of the trade because he's been a really good outfielder, but then again, it's kind of like with Eloy Jimenez, there's that log jam out in the outfield where it's going to be kind of difficult for him to really move on up. So that's, that was kind of the big part of the trade. But I mean, the Yankees, they got a guy that can play third and probably look like he's going to play at first base from what I saw on Roster Resource last night. They got two guys that can really bolster the bullpen. And they took a guy, and the White Sox took Tyler Clippard, a guy that hasn't done well this year, to be part of the relieving corps for the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah. And I'm trying to pull up Todd Frazier's numbers. Okay, yeah, he's not hitting that well.
What is his numbers?
Over his past 37 games, Frazier's hitting 234, 361, 508, 9 homers, 8 doubles.
Yeah, it's not really the prettiest. I mean, his overall for the year,
it's 207, 328, 432, which is just. And then the report I'm reading, the Yankees, that their first baseman bat collective is 208, 295, 391.
Yeah, that was kind of the other thing about it when I was looking all this stuff up for the Yankees. Really, I actually have it in my notes. The reason why they needed to go, somebody for first base or somewhere out in the infield is because there's a cluster in first base. They have Holiday, Garrett Cooper, and Ji-Man Choi, Korean guy. I don't know if I actually said his first name correctly, but I'm going to go with it. Holiday is more of a DH, and he's been doing well as a DH. As a defensive guy, not so much. The Yankees recently brought up Garrett Cooper through their system and Ji-Man Choi, but, with these guys, it's been kind of difficult for them. They haven't really done much with the Yankees. Let me get up their stats real quick if this will work. And really looking at it, you have Matt Holliday shooting a 245 batting average, 344 on base percentage, and a 479 slugging, which is actually really good. I mean, his.
And I was to say, and earlier in he was actually playing pretty well.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, his average is subpar, but I mean, if you look at it as an on-base plus slugging, he's doing well. His WRC plus is doing well, but he's just, I mean, batting wise, he's doing well. Just not a great defender. And then right now, I know it's very, very low numbers for Garrett Cooper and G-Man Choi, but just looking at those real quick, 222, 222, and 389 slash line for Garrett Cooper. He has a 333 BABIP, which looks good, but you're only looking at 18 plate appearances. And then G-Man Choi, same thing, 18 plate appearances. He's hitting 267, 333, and a 733 slash line. But yeah, what were you
as a result of the trade? Wasn't he sent down though?
Yeah, that was kind of the result of the trade. Todd Frazier would take over first base, and then making Matt Holliday part of the permanent
DH, and then Chris Carter adds there.
Yeah, he's kind of like the backup, but he's injured right now, so it's just like, So it's kind of whatever. I mean, Chris Carter would definitely be kind of your first baseman outfielder role, but right now, if I remember correctly, he is injured. But besides that, I mean, if you
on Baseball Reference, they don't have him listed as injured.
Injured? Okay. I could be wrong.
It's Greg. Right now, Baseball Reference has Tyler Austin, Greg Bird, Dustin Fowler, Aaron Hicks, Aaron Judge. Oh, well, that's just a rest day. I don't know why they put that on there. And then Michael Pineda.
Yeah, which actually I'll be talking about that in a moment. I just want to make sure that, I don't know why I said he's injured, but he's not in the starting lineup. I think that's the reason why I said he's injured, because he's not part of the starting lineup, nor he's in the nor he's on the bench. But I guess whatever. I mean,
he's there somewhere.
He's somewhere, unless he got traded or put down. But
random question: Clint Frazier and Todd Frazier, they're not.
To my knowledge, they're not related.
That's what I thought, but I was just scrolling there because Clint Frazier's 22. He's listed as a utility guy, so.
Yeah, I believe if you go, and this is for everybody else, if you go to Baseball Reference and look at their stats and stuff, I believe there is a spot underneath more bio, uniform, draft, and salary information, and I believe sometimes they'll show family members that were in that were a part of the MLB or minor leagues that they would show, but it doesn't look like it is up for that. But anyway, those have been the trades so far for the season, but we're just getting started. The other day at work, it's been kind of Grand Central Station up at the media room, because there's so many scouts for trade deadline. It's ridiculous. I'm trying to get through literally Grand Central Station, busy time of the day, and it's just everybody is just writing down, talking about either talking about life or talking about baseball. We've actually had discussions a little bit about electronics and all that stuff, and it's been pretty interesting. But from what I've told you,
some of the scouts you've talked to, what do they kind of look for?
I haven't really talked to him because I'm just I don't want to intrude, because sometimes when some people scout, they're very closed with their opinions. Some of them are very open. There was a guy that we talked about. Actually, we talked about Whit Merrifield, and there was a guy that he really liked. Really liked Whit Merrifield. And then there's some guys that they don't want to talk about, but from the things that I've heard is that, first of all, I told you this rumor the other day that there was, last night actually, that there was 8 Royal Scouts at the game the other night. All individually looking at a player, each of them looking at an individual player.
Probably looking to see who would have the best trade potential
Yeah.
for the Royals. Not necessarily scouting the Springfield Cardinals.
True.
They're scouting to see one who's doing well and who could help them in the trade.
Exactly. And that was kind of an interesting take, but from, a couple of little hearings, here and there, kind of eavesdropping, some of the guys aren't really too talkative about it. They're all talk about how this one guy back in the day did well, didn't do well. Some of them, like I said, talk about life. We talked about electronics, like how to destroy hard drives, actually, was one of the discussions we talked about, because they're very, very conscious about that. They don't want their stuff to be stolen. Dang you, Cardinals, for doing that. But,
yeah.
I mean, it was actually the conversations have been very interesting. And, I haven't really talked to them about the trade deadline. I think I'm going to do that tonight with some of them.
I was going to say, just find ones that maybe they've come to talk to a couple times before, and it just be kind of like, so what do teams look for at this time of the year?
Yeah, and maybe, hopefully, if they're okay with it, I can record it, but that's more of a crapshoot than anything else.
Well, yeah, or maybe not even record it, but ask them if you could take notes and say that, you do this thing and you would like to give them the proper credit instead of saying just this one scout, but if not, it's understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you don't need to ask them, like, what specific player they're looking for or anything, but just kind of like, what attributes they look in a player at this time of year with their team doing this. What are they looking for?
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right, because like I said last night, like I said on the podcast and off and on the podcast last night, I did a lot of research of what they want, and when I was doing sellers, which I'll get to in a moment, I'm looking at guys, looking at contracts, looking at what their performance is right now. Like, some of the guys that I'll be talking about might not even get the opportunity of a trade, so it's all random. Like, specifically, I think you look at the Jose Quintana trade, you knew that was going to happen with somebody, and then they give up Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease, really two really good prospects. Then you look at the Oakland Athletics, Washington Nationals trade, where Sean Doolittle and Ryan Matson get traded, which really, to be honest with you, I was not expecting. So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but now let's actually get into this. We have our buyers, we have our sellers, we did a little dabble with that, and we also have our fringe teams, which we'll talk about after the break. But right now, let's look at the buyers of this, and just going down the list real quick, we have the Red Sox, the Rays, the Indians, in my opinion, the Houston Astros, even though we did talk a little bit about them, but there's a couple reasons why I want to talk about them. Then you have the Washington Nationals, the Milwaukee Brewers, maybe the Chicago Cubs, but they've already done their stuff.
I think the Cubs have kind of already set.
Yeah, have already done their stuff. The Los Angeles Dodgers. There's a little discussion with that. Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies. Then you have
the Diamondbacks kind of already made their move with Martinez.
Yeah,
the Nationals shored up their bullpen. So of the top teams, there's only a couple teams that are really, I guess, at the top of the division, like the Red Sox, the Astros, and the Brewers. Those are really the only three teams, and the Indians.
Yeah, and they're
that aren't a fringe team, but will be buyers.
Yeah, and they're just trying, and some of the teams are just trying to solidify certain weaknesses, like the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're doing well. They already got an outfielder, but I think they have to go with a reliever. And also the Colorado Rockies. And let me go through the buyers' needs real quick. I had to look it up. Right now, the Boston Red Sox really need a third baseman. They gave up Pablo Sandoval. They DFA'd him. And Devin Mazzaro is really a subpar guy. If you look at his slash line, he has a 212, 257, and a 328. And some of the numbers that I will give out, some of them are from last night. Some of them are today, depending on what time I did this. Of course, I will say what time, but all of it's from Fangraphs. But yeah, that was last night. That 212, that 257, and that 323 slash line with a WRC plus of 48. And so that's where Boston really needs to solidify that spot. They have a couple guys, but I think what was really weird was the Todd Frazier trade with the Yankees. Even though they kind of get a first baseman per se, we were kind of hoping that Todd Frazier would be picked up by the Boston Red Sox.
Was this the kind of move that the Yankees used to make to kind of keep another team out of it?
Yeah, another team that you block, and that's what you have to do in trade deadlines, especially against teams that are in your division, and for the Yankees and Red Sox, especially for their rivalry. But then you have to look at the Tampa Bay Rays, which you look at the relievers, the top 5 relievers. You can't look at Jumbo Diaz because he was actually DFA'd not too long ago. If you look at it, the top 5 relievers by innings are all righties, and only one of them is under a 3 ERA, which is Tommy Hunter. And yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays need to get a lefty reliever. I think that will be kind of something that they'll have to look at. I don't know. I
can't remember, but I was reading a rumor about Pat Neshek going there.
Yes, Pat Neshek, he's kind of one of the guys that I will bring up when we talk about sellers for the Philadelphia Phillies. For the Yankees, we've already went through it. They needed a first baseman. They already kind of got it with the Todd Frazier trade, but also they need starting pitching. Michael Pineda is out for the season. He's getting Tommy John surgery. So they might have to go. They might be, front runners for Sonny Gray if possible. But right now, I don't see anything happening. I haven't heard anything or seen anything about trades with, for starting pitching for the Yankees. For the Cleveland Indians, it's about second baseman or an outfielder or a utility player right now. Jason Kipnis, Lonnie Chisenhall, and Jason Kipnis, second baseman. Outfielders Lonnie Chisenhall and Austin Jackson are guys that are injured at the moment and are prone to be injured. This season, they are a combined 9 injuries. So I think if they get a utility guy, it could be any one of these guys that I will talk about in a couple of moments with the sellers. Could be that guy to really shore up the second base and outfield spots. For the Houston Astros, it's more of solidifying a spot. We talked about it earlier, I believe, off the show, that since Chris Correa will be out for a significant amount of time, Marwin Gonzalez will be taking up his spot, but we don't know the stamina of Marwin Gonzalez. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can play not only a full game, which he can do, but full games in succession over, weeks, and that will be something really interesting. But for me, that's really troubling is probably the starting pitching. Colin McHugh is supposed to be coming. Going to be off rehab soon, and he's getting the Saturday start. Dallas Keuchel is still on the DL, and there's really an uncertainty how they will perform. And the good thing about it is, really looking at it, the Houston Astros are really good ER pitching-wise, relief and starters, but I think it will be something a little bit different with that. So, that's just from the American League side. Do you have anything to say about those teams before I get to the NL real quick?
Well, just with the Astros, talking about Gonzalez and Bregman, Correa's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, so he'll be back by the time the playoffs is. But do the Astros want to get a guy, like a second-tier type of guy, to help out, or do you think they will just ride it out?
For me, I think they'll just ride it out. They got Gonzalez. Yeah. And if they really need somebody, they could probably go through their system. Their system is, top 10 this really stacked, and if they need an outfield guy, because Marwin Gonzalez has played outfield before.
Yep.
If they need somebody for the outfield or the infield, they can just go through their system, even though it will rack up in the 40 in the secondary roster later on, which that was more of a pain for me on Out of the Park Baseball. But that's a different time. That's for a different episode. But anyway, like I said, those are for the American League. For the National League, the Washington Nationals, I mean, they've already done their thing, already got their relievers that they needed, already solidified that. The Milwaukee Brewers, well, actually the Chicago Cubs are another team that have already got their stuff,
in order.
Really,
because
go ahead.
They can't really go out and make a trade for any position players because they seem to be happy with their position players.
It's not only that, but I don't know who else they could trade prospect wise to get another pitcher or another position player. Because like I said, it's already a logjam. I already talked about that with the Quintana trade. It's already a logjam. They're giving Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease opportunities somewhere else where they can get some time. But besides that, those are really the two that I thought was going to be, kind of, they need somebody, but they've already done that. So we have the Milwaukee Brewers. They need starting pitching. Jimmy Nelson. Well, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, besides starting pitching, they could probably use a second baseman or a center fielder.
That's what I was thinking too, and I was like, all right, Jonathan Villar is not doing so well. He has like a 220 batting average.
Yep, and Keon Broxton, same thing, hitting 222. And Eric Thames has really cooled off. He only has 23 home runs, and he's only hitting 253.
Yeah, and that's kind of the weird thing, too. Like, even though they're winning, it's part of their pitching that's really done well for them.
Oh, yeah, their bullpen core is pretty with Corey Knebel, Torres, Jacob Barnes, and Jared Hughes. All four of those guys are pitching really well.
And so that's where it's just kind of like a little bit up in the air on how things are really going. So
They'll be one of the front runners for like a Sonny Gray.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thing. They need another starting pitcher. Their numbers are good. Like I said, the numbers are good to contend. Jimmy Nelson and Chase Anderson are really the only good ones that are able to
Matt Garza's not pitching bad.
He's not pitching bad. But if you look at it, they got Nelson and Anderson have high K per 9 rates. They have a sub 350 ERAs. But what really it would just help them is just a better, really just one more person to push them over. I mean, they have guys like that. But what were you going to say, Phil?
Well, essentially, if you go get Sonny Gray, you could push out Zach Davies or Junior Guerrera. Because Davies, he has 102 innings but a 5.08 ERA. Though somehow he has a win-loss record of 11-4. But
yeah,
I don't like the win. The win's a stupid stat.
It's a really weird stat to even just to even get to the win, the quote unquote win decision is weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, you're right. Matt Garza, Junior Guerrera or Zach Davies would be the guy that would be pushed out. Matt Garza's done well. He has that nice 3.84 ERA with a FIP of 3.98.
And has 77 innings pitched at 33 years old. He's obviously not being overtaxed the first half of the season.
Yeah.
So who's not to say that he can come back and have a really healthy second half, and you plug in a guy like Sonny Gray, the Brewers can maintain that top spot.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they can get one, I'm not saying they need to go out and get a center fielder and a second baseman, but I think one or the other.
And I mean, you're right.
But it does look like they have Eric Sogard in his 43 games is hitting 331, but he's on a 10-day DL with an ankle injury.
Yeah, that's kind of the other thing too.
But
all these injuries. But you're right. They could be going out for an infielder or an outfielder, but I just see that they need to go for starting pitching. Right now they got something good, but they need to go forward.
Yeah, starting pitching is their obvious need, and then probably a center fielder would be their next. Because if they can plug in Eric Sogard and he keeps hitting well, because he has 162 plate appearances, so it's obviously about 50% less than Villar. But, you never know. But how hard is it to be a Red Sox fan and see Travis Shaw do so well?
Yeah, that's very difficult to watch. Very difficult to watch when they were so hard pressed on Pablo Sandoval doing well, and yeah.
They traded Travis Shaw, who's hitting 21 home runs, 299. Just has an OPS plus of 139. So
he's just dominant right now for what could have been for the Boston Red Sox. But to finish out all the buyers real quick, I added the Los Angeles Dodgers pitching overall, like a team that really is okay with just what they have, but a few minor additions would work out on both sides, relief and starting. Then we have the Arizona Diamondbacks. We already talked about J.D. Martinez getting that outfielder spot and Yamanis Tomas being injured, which was an upgrade. They need
and they didn't really need starting or relief pitching.
I mean, you have guys.
You could always use more pitching.
Yeah, of course. That's
the common thing in baseball.
Yeah,
you always want more pitching.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought up relievers is that it's either you're really good or you're really bad. Archie Bradley, Andrew Chafin, and JT McFarland have ERAs of 150, 103, and 122 respectively. As for the others, they have over 4 ERAs. So just, maybe one more guy. Doesn't have to be some high-end guy. It could just be, just smooth sailing. They can just get... it could be any relief pitcher. It could be Matt Bowman of the St. Louis Cardinals, a guy that is, done well. He has I believe he has a 3, somewhere in the 3 ERA range.
Just middle of the road. Yeah. Just kind of solidify those mid innings to bridge your gap to your 8 and 9 type guys.
Yeah, pretty much. And, it's kind of the same thing, relievers wise with the Colorado Rockies.
They got 2 good guys in McGee and Holland. And if John Gray can come back, he's off the DL. So if he can come back and be healthy and pitch well for him.
Yeah, exactly. If he comes back and does well, right now the Rockies have a 4.68 ERA and a 4.64 FIP. Doesn't look nice. Kyle Freeland is the only guy under a 4 ERA with a 3.77, but it doesn't help that half their games are in Coors Field, which is a very, very hitter's ballpark. And, the relievers, too. You bring up Greg Holland, and I brought up a guy with Chris Russin. Those guys have with those two, they have a 157 and a 236 ERA, respectively. But as a whole, the relievers have a 4.44 ERA and a 4.06 FIP. Yeah, the FIP looks good for them. They got, they actually do pitch well, but the defense hasn't done much of that. But again, half the games are at Coors Field. So let's talk about the sellers real quick. For me, I've already decided that the Blue Jays and the Baltimore Orioles are going to be sellers. We could talk about Detroit and Chicago, but they've already done their stuff. Oakland has already kind of done their stuff. We're just waiting for Sonny Gray. Then that's it for the American League. Then you have the Marlins, the Mets, the Phillies, the Pirates, and the Cincinnati Reds. I was going to say the San Diego Padres, but I don't think they really have anybody to sell.
They really don't. Yeah. Most of their top prospects are up.
Yeah, exactly. And then the San
Francisco.
With
all those prospects up, the Padres are playing surprisingly well.
Yeah, even though it's
40 and 53, so yeah. I say surprising, but they're not in the cellar, and you're getting to see a bunch of young talent come play.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so much better than the San Francisco Giants, which is another team that I brought up. But what's up?
I don't really see them selling too much either. They don't have a lot, do they?
It's not necessarily they have a lot. They just have a couple of guys like Johnny Cueto that is, which they've said that is up for the block. But then again, you're kind of right. They don't have a lot. But let me go through this list real quick of the teams that, the players that the teams that I've already talked about, the players that will be able to trade, in my opinion. Right now, for the Blue Jays, I think it will be a great idea to trade Justin Smoke. He's hitting .292, .363, and a .571 slash line, a .303 BABIP with a 145 weighted runs created plus. And the reason why he's on a 2-year, $8.5 million contract with an option in 2019. So you kind of have this guy that can hit, and he'll be on your team for quite a while. Then it's Robert Ozuna, right now, relief pitcher for them. He has a 1.93 ERA with a 1.53 FIP, an 11.81 K per nine, and a .96 walks per nine. And you love this stat, and I'm actually now kind of enjoying this stat too. But the left on base for him is a 77.6%. Nothing too dazzling. I mean, there's other guys that have better. Yeah, that have better. But the reason why I like him is because he has 3 years of team control left after this year.
And he's only 22 years old.
Yeah. So you kind of you have everything for him ready to go if you want to do that. Another guy that I brought up, which is kind of iffy in a sort, but he's doing real well run created wise, is Josh Donaldson. He has a 250, 374, and a 455 slash line with a 297 BABIP, which is just under the 300 average, but he has that nice 124 weighted runs created plus. But this is where the kicker is. This is where it gets down to it. He's on a 2-year, $28.65 million contract, which ends at the end of this year, which is great. But are you willing to pay I guess it would be like 14.3 whatever $1 million for the rest of it, and then want to try for it? I mean, right now he looks like a good rental player. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, and it didn't help that for the first half of the season he was injured because he's only played in 51 games.
Mm-hmm.
There's been about 93 games played.
Yeah, so far.
So he missed about half the season so far.
Mm-hmm.
So you expect him to, his previous year's numbers. I wish I could do what he did second half wise, but yeah, as a rental player, I think he'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just troubling, because he's only played half the season, so that's why he has a 246 batting average.
Mm-hmm.
But the year before, he had 37 home runs and a 284 average. The year before that, 41 home runs and 297.
Yeah.
But then in 2014, he only had 29 home runs and 255 average.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be you either keep him if you're the Blue Jays or give him up and give away the rest of that contract. So
and maybe get something out of him because I don't know if he'll re-sign with them at the end of the year or not.
I don't think he will, to be honest with you.
Because coming in at 31 years old, there's no doubt he'll get another contract, but you would think that he would try to get a contract with a contending team where he could go and maybe not have to play third base, where he can go and be a DH.
Yeah, exactly. But, beyond that, we got another team in that in the American League East, which is the Baltimore Orioles. Right now, there's going to be 3 guys in every spot, and to be honest with you, for the Baltimore Orioles, I think it would be a good idea to give up Jonathan Scope second baseman for them, relief pitcher Richard Bellier, or Beller, and then another relief pitcher that everybody's been talking about, Zach Britton. All have great numbers. Scope has a 293, 341, and a 525 slash line. His BABIP is a 327, and his weighted runs created plus is a 126. Why I like this is because right now he's only on a 1 year, $3.475 million contract, but that's through arbitration. He has 2 years left with team control. Richard Bellier, it has a 134 ERA, 409 FIP, which that's not really good. He's not really a strikeout guy with a 401 K per 9, a 241 walks per 9. He does have that nice high left on base percentage at an 80.1, but he's an older guy. I believe when I looked at it, he was over 30. He's cheap for them. Right now, he's team controlled, and I believe, and I had to write this down, he'll be arbitration eligible in 2020. So you got that nice team control even before arbitration comes in. And then Zach Britton, he has a 193 ERA with a 314 FIP. His K per 9 is a 579 with a 386 walks per 9. He has that really, really high 87.5 left on base percentage. But right now, even though you have to pay the rest of an $11.4 million contract, plus the 1 year team controlled, which that's through arbitration, I think those will be guys to really look at for the Baltimore Orioles.
Speaking of them, do you think they can move a guy like Michael Givens or Brad Batch?
Yeah.
Because both
do
of
that.
Bratch and Givens, they have 268 and a 209 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the type of guys that won't get you a whole lot of return, but they'll get you something in a team desperate towards the end of the trade deadline to get a middle reliever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And Brad Batch has been saving games. He has 26 games finished and 16 saves and 40 innings pitched.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could get other possibilities for him as well, but one's got to stay, one's got to go, and I really thought Zach Britton.
And with Zach Britton only pitching 15 innings so far this season, it's how much are you going to get out of him for that?
Yeah, and I mean that's all because of injury and. That happens.
But when you're looking at it as a team, though, you're looking at a guy that's coming off an injury and only pitched 15 innings. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can be optimistic and say, well, he's going to be nice and healthy for the last half of the season so they can use him a little bit more. But is that injury going to flare back up?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, that's the risk that you have to take for a guy that's under team control and you only have to pay half of his $11.4 million contract. Yep. And, that's really kind of it for the American League. I mean, yeah, we talk about the Oakland Athletics. Mostly it's about Sonny Gray and Yonder Alonso. Yonder Alonso, just real quick, has a 267, 365, and a 553 slash line, 297 BABIP with a 145 WRC plus. But he only has a 1 year contract of $4 million, and then he's for a free agent. So that's where you kind of go with that. I mean, we've already said stuff about the Detroit Tigers, how they could trade more, but I think they're kind of done, and they don't really have the guys to deal with it. But I mean, that's it for the American League. For the national
sellers wise,
sellers wise. For the national,
I did want to say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did hear a rumor about Seattle maybe trading Gerard Dyson.
Really interesting.
And if the Brewers need a center fielder, I've always thought Dyson would be great in the National League.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can play all three outfield positions.
Mm-hmm.
And on his day off, he could pinch run or pitch hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he has that type of speed.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it could happen. You never know. Trade deadlines are always a risky business.
Before we talk about the National League, got an injury update. It appears Chris Bryant might have broken his thumb.
Oh man, so maybe it's time to get that trade to get somebody at third base. No,
yeah, well, I saw it in our baseball room, and then I checked the beat writers of the Cubs, and the Cubs haven't done an X-ray or released any updates yet. But from the video I watched and the screen cap, it didn't look good.
He's been going through a lot of stuff this year. Remember that? Remember him stepping onto the bag when he was trying to get that fly ball? That was a weird injury. And
weird baseball injuries, man.
I mean, that's the game of baseball. That's sports in general. It's just weird injuries, you know. But now it's maybe the Cubs should buy somebody, you know, for Chris Bryant. But then again, they have all those guys, you know, in the bench and in AAA. So that'd just be kind of redundant.
Oh yeah, especially if not going to be out for the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. But since we are talking, yeah, go ahead.
But you know they're trying to trace the Brewers here, and they take one of those guys out of their lineups. The Brewers could just make that lead even bigger.
And yeah,
because they're competing with the Diamondbacks and Rockies for wild card spots.
Yeah, and that's kind of where Milwaukee needs to actually show up. And really, I haven't looked at the standings today or the scores from yesterday. I'm pretty sure.
I'm looking at the standings right now. The Brewers are up 2.5 games on the Cubs.
Okay, and I know it's close. That's all I can say. And I didn't really check the scores for yesterday, but I have a feeling that the Milwaukee Brewers lost last night, which doesn't help their cause. But now with this big injury from Chris Bryant, might change the tide a little bit. But anyway, back to the sellers of this year's trade deadline. We have the Miami Marlins right now, where we thought they were going to do well, but they've just I think they're still third, correct?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. But they're 14.5 games back.
Yeah, where we guessed they would be third, but nothing like what's been happening at the moment. But the guys that I think they should trade off is Marcell Ozuna, outfielder for them, Dustin McGowan, which is a relief pitcher, and then outfielder Christian Yelich. Right now, Marcell.
I don't think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ozuna and Yelich, they're 26 and 25 years old. I don't think, with Stanton being 27, I don't think they want to start trading off those younger players yet.
That is true. But
because those guys, their outfield is hitting 316, 281, 281, and 275.
Mm-hmm.
And Ozuna has 23 home runs, Stanton has 29, and Yelich has 8.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have guys. Like, it's kind of an anomaly how bad this team is doing, because they got JT Realmuto, their catcher, hitting 300, and then Justin Bour hitting 21 home runs and 285, and then D. Gordon hitting 293.
Mm-hmm.
And then they really only have 2 bad hitters on their teams. That's JT Riddle hitting 251 and Derek Dietrich at 242.
Mm-hmm.
But their pitching is what's destroying them.
Yeah, that's where it kind of is like they could stand pat. You're right. Do
they stand pat and try to spend some money on some free agents on starting pitching and relief pitching? Because if you trade a guys away like Ozuna, Yelich, or Stanton,
mm-hmm.
well, they're not going to trade Stanton. His contract's too big. But
yeah, they would have to eat that contract like none other.
But Ozuna or Yelich, as a fan, I would be really upset if they traded away guys like that.
Yeah, and
they already have problems with fans getting to the stadium to begin with.
Yeah, and you're not wrong about that. I think a lot of fans would be upset with trades, but you never know what's going to happen at the trade deadline. You never know who's going to give up 5 guys for one.
Exactly. If they would get some sort of like ridiculous offer from a fringe team that would offer 3 or 4 top pitching prospects,
mm-hmm.
then it'd be hard not to say yes to that.
Yeah, and that's where it's kind of,
But it would have to be that kind of trade to where that team was desperate enough to win now and not worry about later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I like Marcell Ozuna and Christian Yelich. They're guys that are able to be traded. I mean, not necessarily you want to trade them in a sense if you are the Marlins, but if you're getting a lot of prospects for them, then why not do it? Again, they're doing real well. You've already talked about their batting averages. But the reason why I like those two guys is because this year, after this year, Ozuna will be 2 years of arbitration. Christian Yelich, he's on a 7-year, $49.5 million contract, which goes all the way through 2021, but he also has an option in 2022. So you have a lot of team control with these two guys. And it's, with Dustin McGowan, kind of the outlier of all of this, he's doing really well as a relief pitcher. But the reason why I like him is he's that rental. He's only here for a 1-year, $1.75 million contract. He's doing well. He has a 2.92 ERA with a 3.90 FIP and a 7.66 Ks per 9. But it's just that rental that maybe somebody that will need, and it's a good rental because you only have to pay half that contract.
He's the type of guy that I could see going to like the Rockies or the Diamondbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not that shut down, back at the end bullpen kind of guy, but he's a guy, especially for a National League team, that could pitch the 6th, 7th for you and bridge it to your 8th and 9th guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of the reason why I went with these guys. Not only that they're doing so well, but it's also they have that control. I mean, like you said, you could go with Giancarlo Stanton. Yeah, we can trade him. But who's willing to get
eat that contract? Nobody.
Contract? No one.
Nobody. And so that's why, I look at it from a marketing standpoint, too. If you look at the Marlins, you have a really marketable outfield right now.
Mm-hmm.
25, 26, 27, and you got those guys underneath team control for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And
so that's why I don't think they want to blow it up.
Yeah.
Because they got D. Gordon, Justin Bour, and JT Realmuto. So if they can get their pitching in order for 2018, this team could be really scary.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because they have the high potent offense.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, this is all just hypotheticals. None of this probably will happen. Maybe all of it will happen. We'll never know. On to the next team real quick. We have the New York Mets, and that the team just, kind of just collapsed. And we could talk about injury-plagued players that haven't been living up to their potential or their, what they did last year. But it's...
they don't have a guy hitting above 300.
Yeah.
Their best hitter is Michael Conforto, and they're not going to trade him because he's only 24 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And, the three guys that I brought up is Addison Reed, Zach Wheeler, and Jay Bruce. For Jay Bruce, it's kind of right now he's on his option year for $13 million. Cut that in half. That's what you'll get probably when you trade him. He's
not hitting bad,
outfield.
Though.
Yeah. He's
hitting 267 with 24 home runs.
Mm-hmm. And it's that crowded outfield. That's what I'm talking about. That's the reason why I see.
Yeah, because they got Cespedes. They got Juan Lagares. They just don't got room for them.
Mm-hmm.
And just being a Royals fan, I would much rather take that DH production over what we're getting right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that might happen. But then again, it's all hypotheticals. The reason why I like the other two, Addison Reed and Zach Wheeler, right now, I believe Reed and Wheeler are both team-controlled guys. Reed right now has a 2.47 ERA with a 2.90 FIP. Wheeler has a 4.98 with a 4.80 FIP. Wheeler not doing so well. I mean, he's a starting pitcher, but he's young. And that's where you can kind of mold this guy into...
You could essentially maybe not spend as many prospects on him.
Yeah.
Because you can take what is he doing lately. And lately this season, he has not been pitching. Essentially, his ERA is a 4.98.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to give up top-tier prospects to get a guy like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with team control and hopefully with the right coaching and stuff, do well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's where it's just, for me, that's where I kind of see that with the Mets. I mean, hell, anybody can go. I've heard Matt Harvey could go. I've heard just anybody on that team could go. But that's just my three with the Mets, though.
Hold on. What about TJ Riviera?
I've heard he could go, too.
Because his position is Baseball Reference listed it as CI.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
Which is very interesting.
I don't know. Let me pull up his bio.
He should be close.
Second, third, and first.
Yeah. I was about to say CI. I could see if it was CL, like lowercase L for closer. But,
and, he got called up last year in 16.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like just for September, 33 games, he hit 333.
Mm-hmm.
And this year in 66 games, he's hitting 292.
But you also have to think what's going on at third base. Most likely he's playing there where David Wright is enjoying the Sons of Florida.
But William Flores is playing third base right now. He's hitting 278.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil Walker is on the 10-day DL.
Yeah, and, TJ Riviera, like I said, he plays third. Also, Wilmer Flores, you have Asdrubal Cabrera, and as shortstop, and Neil Walker at second.
So that's why I was saying, it's crowded. Their infield is also crowded.
And I think it's going to be, the infield could change here and there. TJ Riviera might be a guy that will be staying once Asdrubal Cabrera or Neil
Jose
Walker
Reyes.
Or Jose Reyes leaves, which
that needs to happen.
That needs to happen. But enough.
But I agree.
Ahead.
I see Jay Bruce of the three you listed. Jay Bruce would be the guy that I see getting moved because he's been in trade talks since the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm. And I mean that happens.
He could definitely go to a AL team that needs a DH.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think any team really wants him out in right field.
Yeah. And you're right about that. I don't think anybody would like to see that happening. But anyway, that's it for the Mets. I have for the Philadelphia Phillies only two because it was just really hard to pinpoint who and who. So I went with Pat Neshek and Luis Garcia, two guys. Two guys. Well, one of them is team controlled. Luis Garcia, he has 4 years of team control, and then Pat Neshek is already on his option year of his 2-year, $12.5 million contract, which is at 6.5. And why these guys? You have Pat Neshek throwing a 1.17 ERA with a 2.06 FIP, a 9.63 K per nine, and a walk per nine of 1.17. His 90 and a 92.5% left on base percentage.
Yep.
Then with Luis Garcia, a 2.37 ERA, a 3.26 FIP, a 7.11 Ks per nine, a 3.08 walks per nine, and an 82.1 left on base percentage. And Luis Garcia is young too. I think this is
he's
kind
30.
of where, still. I mean, and team controlled, and he's doing this. I mean, doing well.
Oh, and what I was going to say too, him
ahead.
and Neshek have pretty much the same innings pitched at 38, but Luis Garcia has only appeared in 33 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like he's the kind of guy that can go 2 innings for you.
Yeah,
and be dominant.
Exactly.
So again, a team like the Rockies or the Diamondbacks or even like those fringe teams that I think that need that kind of bridge in the middle of their bullpen.
Yeah, and I mean
that's the type of guy they can use.
Yeah, I mean guys like the Twins, Royals, somewhat of the Royals, the Mariners,
Royals would love it.
Mariners, Angels, Rangers, all those guys. I even said the Atlanta Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals as the fringe teams, but that's a whole different thing.
He's the type of guy that could go to one of those teams and definitely bridge that gap to their other 2 good relievers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And he would cost significantly less compared to what the Phillies would want out of Neshek.
Yeah, and with Neshek, it's kind of that, rent-a-player type of guy. So, I mean, for the Phillies, it's, it's going to be about the future. And if they can get a prospect or two from these 2 guys, I think it will work out for them. So,
yep.
And which leads up now to the NL Central. We have the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, I have good old Andrew McCutchen, Ivan Nova, and Felipe Rivero, which Rivero has...
Is pure dominant?
Yeah, this is the guy that, for me, is more of the guy to look at than McCutchen or Nova. He has an ERA of .71. He has a FIP of 216. His K per 9 is a 10.66, and his walks per 9 is a 2.13 with an 82.9% left on base. And he's team controlled after this year. Team control for 4 years. So, and right now it only looks like he's getting $500,000 a year.
Yeah, it looks like he's league minimum right now.
Yeah. So I mean.
And so if someone's going to trade for him, they're going to have to give up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because as the Pirates, you kind of hold all the chips with him. Like, look, he's making league minimum. He's pitching this well. How much are you willing to give up for him? They can say no to a lot of offers.
Yeah, and that could happen. That could happen. And Andrew McCutchen, just real quick, he's really coming off of a rebound year. But are the Pirates? This is where I'm kind of where I can be confused about with just the thinking of team management. Are the Pittsburgh Pirates going to renew a contract with him, or just going to give him up now for prospects? For me, I believe in the aforementioned give him up for prospects. I mean, why not? He's doing well.
He's doing better than he was last year.
Yeah, he's doing,
and especially having to go back to center field after Marte was suspended. But Marte should be coming back.
Yeah,
soon, right?
The 80-game suspension just was relieved, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago.
Okay, so he'll probably go do a week of rehab assignment somewhere.
Yeah.
And then he'll just get thrown right back in because the Pirates aren't contending. And so with their outfield, depending on who they want to send down, it's either Adam Frazier or they're going to let John Jaso, or they're going to DFA John Jaso.
And that's a possibility that they could do that. He's not.
Yeah, because because at this point in the season, Adam Frazier's 25 years old and he's already hitting 265. So why take that away from him?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not just let him just ride it out and finish the season up at the majors? Because he's already played in 72 games. So trading McCutchen's not a bad idea because I don't know if they would do it in division, but the Brewers need a center fielder or an outfielder. The Nationals would probably benefit if they wanted to go kind of all in. And, Michael Taylor and let McCutchen go there. So there's teams that need an outfielder.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe it would be.
And he's hitting 17 home runs too, so it's not like his power has diminished that much.
Yeah, and you bring up the Nationals real quick. It'll be kind of hard to take out Jason Worth, but then again, it'll be kind of it'd just be switching out, which wouldn't be necessarily a problem. That was kind of my one thing too. McCutchen being traded, and you bring up in division, and I think it could happen. I mean, the reason why I say that is because if they're going to trade with anybody, it's going to be through Milwaukee. They're not going to do it with the Cubs, and they're not going to do it with the Cardinals.
No.
Because those two teams have been literally hell on the Pirates for the past 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And so
if the Pirates can do something that would help the Brewers beat them, I think as a management and front office, that would just be nice to see.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'd get pissed off because I'm a Cardinals fan, but, that's business.
Yeah, you'd understand it because they're doing something that would make the Brewers be better than them.
Yeah, and
it would be weird seeing McCutchen in a Brewers uniform, though.
I don't know I like those old school unis, those baby blue jerseys. It would be nice to see Andrew McCutchen in that, but
and that would definitely solidify the Brewers, though.
Yeah,
if the Brewers could get a McCutchen and a reliever, or if they get Sonny Gray and McCutchen, that team could make a really good run in the National League until they ran into the Dodgers.
And yeah, that's pretty much it would be. And the Dodgers could be looking for an outfielder too. I mean, there's a lot of variables that could go on.
What they got?
Dodgers.
They got Jock Peterson, Yasiel Puig, and Bellinger.
Yeah, but Bellinger is kind of
he spends time at first base though too, right?
He's been mostly at first because of Adrian Gonzalez being.
Who's playing in left then?
It was Tolles or Barnes. It's been a while since I've looked at the lineups, but I know that Bellinger has kind of flip-flopped between
left and first.
Just outfield and first base. I mean, let me take a gander real quick at the starting lineup. Darn you. There we go.
Yeah, Chris Taylor, Logan Forsythe, Enrique Hernandez, Trace Thompson.
I mean, there's a lot of players that can play out in outfield for the Dodgers, and it was last night Chris Taylor for them. So I know and
Chris Taylor's playing well too. He has 300 batting average with 263 at bats. So do the Dodgers finally push out Puig, who is appeared in 88 games and only hitting 248?
Maybe. You never know.
Jock Peterson's not doing any better, and his 187 at bats, he's only hitting 246. So they have a definite need for a contact hitter out in the outfield.
Exactly.
Yeah, because Puig only has one more home run than McCutchen, but McCutchen has a 291 average. And McCutchen can play right field. So
yeah, and for the Dodgers, it's all about Adrian Gonzalez. If he does well, they'll put Bellinger out in the outfield and all that stuff, which he can play. I mean, but that's it for the Pirates. And we got one team. We have the Cincinnati Reds, and really the guys that I really like are the relief pitcher Raciel Iglesias. Then, of course, we've already talked about this guy, shortstop Zach Cozart, and then I believe he's an outfielder, Adam Duvall. And I blame Fangraphs for not showing me what position he plays in without actually going to his
left fielder and first base.
Yeah, without going into his player profile. But
this year he's played left field and first base. He's played 85 games at left field.
Left field.
Yep.
I mean, he does a lot, but getting back to this.
But that seems to be his primary position.
Yeah.
Because in 2016 he played 136 games there.
And getting back to this, why I like those guys, besides of them doing well, let's go through Adam Duvall since we just talked about him. He's under team control until 2022. That's when his free agency, quote unquote, free agency is up. Right now he's getting the league minimum of $577K, and you get one more year of that, and then starting at 2019 to 2021 will be his arbitration years. So that's a really good idea, and he's hitting, even though he's hitting 274 as an average, he has that on base plus slugging just in the 800 mark. Then his WRC plus is a 116. His BABIP is a 318. So that's why I like about this guy. And he has 20 home runs, which is not bad at all. And so that's why I like Duvall. Zach Cozart, we've kind of already talked about it. He's doing
obvious reasons. A good defensive shortstop, hitting 318. So you know what you're going to get out of him.
And that WRC plus of 142 does not doesn't hurt either. And contract wise, just real quick, through Cozart, it's his last year. He's only making $5 million. You get half of that through that, and then he's a free agent. So he's that perfect rental player. And I brought up Raciel Iglesias. I know a lot of people hearing that I didn't bring up Joey Votto, but Votto doing great. don't get me wrong. I mean, he has an over 1,000 on base plus slugging. But the reason why I went with didn't go with Votto is that contract.
He has what? He signed through 2023, and it's a $225 million contract.
Yeah, right now.
And he's not a free agent until 2024.
Yeah, right now, in his contract, like you said, it goes through 2023. 2024, he becomes a free agent. But if you look at his numbers, right now he's paid for $22 million, and then from 18 to 20, from the year 2022, $25 million each year. So they would have to eat up the contract for him to be, to do well. But for Raciel Iglesias, right now he has a 161 ERA, a 232 FIP, that nice 11.08 K per nine, and that 322 walks per nine. He has a left on base percentage of 84.2%. But it also, you have to look at the contract. Right now, he's on a 7-year, $27 million contract, which goes all the way to 2020. But it's relaxed. Right now, he's getting 4.2 mil this year, and then for the next couple of years, it goes up $1 million to 5.2 in 18, then up just 500,000 for 5.5. And 5.7 mil for the last 2 years for 2019 and 2020. So that's why I like him.
He can keep this kind of production, that's a really good contract.
Really cheap, in a sense. So for that, I could see Raciel and out of all those three, I can see Iglesias and Cozart really going. Adam Duvall, not so much.
No, just because. What is he? 28, but yeah, if Joey Votto is to go somewhere, either the Reds will just have to eat that. They just make a prorated contract and eat most of it. But if they don't, Joey Votto is just going to stay.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen, and like you said, unless the Cincinnati Reds eat that contract. But I don't see that happening. So, Phil, do you have anything else to say? Do you have a team in mind or a player in mind that you could see be traded or want?
No, not that we already hit on.
Okay. Yeah, because, that was, that's a lot right there. And those are teams that are definite sellers. We haven't even talked about the fringe teams yet. But first of all, we are going to take a break, and then we'll come back, talk about those teams that are on the fringe, and actually talk about Phil's interview with Coach Couch Live last week. And, of course, we'll be talking about the beers that we are having. So this is Andrew Sherman with Phillip Corwin for the MLBeers podcast. And welcome back, folks, to the MLBeers podcast. And, of course, after we get off of our break, we talk about the beers, the second part of our name. But interestingly enough, we don't have any tonight. And there's actually, I don't think it's an excuse, but we do have an explanation why. Is because our break was 7 hours long, and we both had work.
Yeah,
so,
we both actually had to go do things today.
Yeah, we didn't have the luxury of getting it all done within 3 hours. We had the luxury of getting it done in 8 hours. So, folks, I guess we're finally disappointing you all by not drinking a beer during the show. But
we'll make up for it next time. We'll drink 2 beers.
We'll just shotgun beers. That's what we'll do.
Yes. And we can just lie to you and say that we did. You can't prove it.
That is true. That is true. So, I mean, it can go anywhere. It can go anywhere. So, anyway, we brought up before we went to the 7-hour long break. We teased that you had an interview with the Coach Couch Live Podcast, Phil. I wasn't able to attend because it was during my other job's hours, but give us a taste. How did it go?
It went really well. We had a line of questions out, asking about the second half of the season, wondering how the All-Star game went. What else? Oh, they asked me what kind of beer Bryce Harper would be. And I think we retweeted the sound segment from where I was on there with our podcast. So if you want to go check that out, just go to our Twitter page at MLBeers Podcast. But overall, I think it went pretty well. It was a good opportunity to branch out a little bit other than here.
And I will have to ask, just to tease, what is the beer that Bryce Harper would be?
I went with a style of beer. I went with like an Imperial IPA.
Okay.
Because it's a very intense beer, typically. A lot of hops, kind of punches you right in the face. Better than he can throw a helmet.
Man, that is a very cold-blooded statement right there. Very, very cold-blooded. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that, we got our name out there even more besides doing our weekly shows. But, I mean, I'm glad that you had fun, and hopefully he'll call us back up again, and hopefully
we'll get right back on it.
Yeah, before the playoffs happen. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So
yeah, it was a good time.
Good. I'm actually glad for that because, like I said, it got our name out there, and maybe we'll get him more fans along the way. Never know. You never know.
Right.
So
that's how this stuff works.
Yeah. Exactly. So anyway, we're down to the last part of, I guess, trade season part 1, if you could say, because we're going to talk about it next week and see if there's been any differences and all of that stuff. So now we are talking about the fringe teams, or the teams that I like to call in purgatory because they're just in limbo. We've already talked about the buyers. We've already talked the sellers. Now it's time to talk about the teams that are the fringe teams. And we got a list here that I thought of earlier and Phil thought of earlier, and we kind of came together on these. And we think that the Minnesota Twins, the Kansas City Royals, the Seattle Mariners, somewhat of the Atlanta Braves, but we've already discussed about what's going on with their organization a little bit, and then my St. Louis Cardinals. And, first of all, really looking at this as a whole, you have to look at the wild card standings at the moment. You have Tampa Bay taking over the American League wild card with a 51-45 record. Then the Yankees are the second wild card team with a 48-45. But 3 of those teams that we named, the Kansas City Royals, the Seattle Mariners, and the Minnesota Twins, are really right in the thick of it. The Minnesota Twins are only a half a game back. Seattle's only a game and a half back. And the Royals are only 2.5 games back. And then, of course, Texas, they're not far from it, too. They're 3.5 games back. And, when you look at Seattle and Texas just overall, they're done. They're done division-wise. It's all about the wild card.
It's pretty easy to forget that they're competing for a wild card spot just because of how well the Astros are doing.
Yeah, and
they kind of overshadow the other teams' records compared to what's the wild card standings are looking like. And like you said, Texas Rangers are only 3.5 back. That's not a hard deficit to come behind from.
Yeah, exactly. And really looking at this, you also, you have the Royals and Minnesota Twins on the other side where, they don't necessarily have to get in through the wild card. They could still win their division. I believe the Minnesota Twins are only a game back or half a game.
Game and a half back, and the Royals are three games back.
So, I mean, it's still a tight race within the American League Central, which has been very, very interesting. But why are these teams fringe teams? Why is that? And you got to really look at what their record has been. I mean, right now the Minnesota Twins are 48-46. The Seattle Mariners are 48 even. Then the Kansas City Royals are 45-47, and the Texas Rangers are 45-49. And when you look at that, you also have to look at what's been going on and what's looking into the future. Right now, just starting with the Minnesota Twins, they lost the series against Houston when the season started back up, but they won the series against the New York Yankees, two games out of 3, and they got somewhat of a easy schedule coming up before the trade deadline, which is January 31st. And you got 3 games at home against the Detroit Tigers. Then you have, which is really right now the hardest team in all of baseball, one of the best teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They go out to the West Coast and play them in Dodger Stadium. And then they kind of cruise back towards Oakland and, cruise and probably win that series. And if you look at that, you're kind of looking at a team that will contend, and they have probably a couple they have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and of course Monday, the trade deadline day, to really sort things out. And looking at that also, if it does come to the moment where they're like, okay, we need to buy now, we're hot, we're on the Indians' tail, we're in the wild card, what's our main concern?
Looking at it, it would have to be starting pitching.
Okay.
Because they've gotten by with somewhat of a subpar offense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at their numbers right now, they're relying on a guy like Kyle Gibson with a 6.29 ERA and 87 innings pitched. Alberto Mejia, 4.22 ERA, 70 innings pitched.
Mm-hmm.
Hector Santiago, he's on a 10-day DL, but he has 70 innings pitched with a 5.63.
Mm-hmm.
Their bullpen pitching, they're getting good usage out of Brandon Kitzler, then Taylor Rogers. But then they got guys like Tyler Duffy with a 4.80, Matt Bessel with a 5.35, and Ryan Presley with a 7.12 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that, if they're going to make a run, they're going to have to do it through the starting pitching or the relief pitching, some sort of pitcher.
Okay.
Because they can't do a complete overhaul where they make a big trade for 3 or 4 different guys, because I don't think they're in the position to do that.
And you say that they're not in a position to do that because they don't have the prospects or they don't have the money per se?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. More or less somewhere along that line, because they can't go out and get a guy to replace Brian Buxton who's hitting 218, or go out and get a great starting catcher to replace Castro who's only hitting 218.
Mm-hmm. And
then, Brian Dozier's having a down year with 15 home runs and hitting 250. Jorge Polanco's only hitting 221. Mm-hmm. So they have their issues, and that's why their last 30, they're 13-7. 13-team.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of stuck in between of, do we trade some of our prospects and keep where we're at and try to make a run, or do they just kind of hold pat and play for more of 2018?
All right. I mean that makes sense. Really looking at it and what you said, the Minnesota Twins, if they don't make it and if they still have these guys for next year, then they, most likely have an opportunity to bounce back and make it to the playoffs if they don't make it this year, or go back-to-back playoffs if they, if they stand pat. I think the one weird thing that's going to happen that, in my opinion, the Cleveland Indians are going in all in right now. And if things don't work out, I mean, it could be the Minnesota Twins, which, we thought before we came back from our 7-hour-long break is that it would be a weird combination of a World Series with the Minnesota Twins and the Milwaukee Brewers.
Because those two teams we didn't think were going to be able to amount to anything this season. And if, let's say, the Twins, from here until July 30th, they lose. Like, they don't have a winning record, and let's say they're 4 or 5 games back of the wild card. Do they take a chance and try to trade Santana? Because he's having the best year of his career right now with the 2.99 ERA. And his strikeout per 9 is a 6.7, so not a lot of strikeouts. His FIP is a 476. But would he be able to be beneficial to a team that needs a starting pitcher? And would they consider themselves out of it at that point and try to get some return on him? Because what is his contract right now?
Probably something, mildly low. It's not like looking at
he signed
Cabrera.
through 2018, so he has one more year left after this year, and it's a $55 million deal.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean that doesn't sound bad. Was it I'm guessing it was a 3-year. I don't have all the numbers in front of me.
It was a 4-year deal.
Okay, so yeah, those numbers aren't bad. That's 54, so that's a little bit of like 16 or somewhere around there, 14 to 16 mil
and
a
there's
year.
an option for 2019. So if a team wants him, they get him for another year. So if he keeps pitching this well, it only drives his value up. So do the Twins see themselves out of it and maybe go out and get a outfielder or an infielder and then try to sign a starting pitcher in the offseason?
And it's again all up in the air. Like I said, with that schedule, it's going to be a middle ground to show what's really going on with with that team. And it's with all teams essentially. And looking at the Kansas City Royals, the next team that I want to talk about that are in the same division, right now I don't know how it's leaning. I mean, looking at it right now, you have them only winning 1 out of their last 5 games. They're still facing Detroit tonight, which they're actually down by 1 at the top of the 9th. Then they face Detroit.
Are they down by 1? I thought they were up.
They're down 3-2 now.
Oh, awesome.
So
we literally just checked that like 2 seconds ago.
That is no joke. Cool. That is no joke. But yeah, we were like, oh, what's the score? I know it was like 2-1, but didn't know, and now we know again. But in this 4-game series right now with Detroit, they're not showing their stuff, not really working with it. And then
pitching has been the thing that let them down. Because last night it was 9-3 loss. Monday night it was 10-2. And you're playing a Detroit Tigers team that's not that good. And they're just tearing the starting pitching and bullpen pitching up.
And maybe I guess it's time for them to get hot, and somehow Detroit makes a run for the playoffs. But I was about to say, after this Detroit series, it's kind of the same. They go face the Chicago White Sox for 3 at home, and then they go to Detroit to play a 3-game series. And then really, I think what will probably solidify, if it hasn't already happened, you have the Boston Red Sox away for 3 games, and then you have the 1 game on trade deadline day with the Baltimore Orioles. But I think it will be already decided by then if certain things happen. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And what's going to help the Royals the most is going out and getting a starting pitcher. Because, they got Jason Hamm with a 5.02 ERA. Danny Duffy is pitching well. Jason Vargas is pitching well. Ian Kennedy's not pitching bad with a 4.32. But Nate Carnes is out for the year. Matt Strahm is out for the year. So they really don't have that 5th type starter. There's been spot starts from Jacob Junis, but in his 35 innings, he has a 5.66 ERA. Then Eric Skoglund, he had one good start, but his 9 2/3 innings has a 5.59. And they tried to rely on Travis Wood for starts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has 2 starts in 37 innings, but he has a 6.81 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
So if they could get someone like a Julio Teheran, which is a rumor I heard earlier,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of course they're probably looking at Sonny Gray as well.
That would be if I can actually speak at 10 o'clock at night, that would be an interesting thing to happen for the Royals if they did get Sonny Gray out of this.
Yeah. And, you know, and if you look at their batting, they're really not doing that terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Except for, like, 2 guys. Alex Gordon with a 194, Brandon Moss with a 188. And the other guy you could argue that's doing poorly is Alcides Escobar with the 234, but he's never been that prolific of a hitter anyways.
Mm-hmm.
He's more or less on the field for his defense at short.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they've gotten good production out of Jorge Bonifacio, who they called up.
Mm-hmm.
11 home runs, 254 ERA, batting average.
Mm-hmm.
So, doing better than Jorge Soler, but going into it, if the Royals are going to have to compete, they're going to have to figure out what's going on with their pitching. And that hasn't been the case for them in 2014 and 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they're going to do it, it would obviously have to happen in the next week or 2. But
yes.
I don't see them going out and getting like that number 1 ace like they did with Cueto that year.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe like a 2 to 3 type of rotation guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that can kind of solidify it. And then they can keep Travis Wood in the bullpen where he was pitching well at.
You make valid, valid statements right there, valid arguments where, the Royals, there's just something that was missing, and you're right. It's been from the pitching. There's been injuries here and there. Duffy was down for a couple days. You said Nathan Carnes is out for the season, correct?
Yep, and then Ian Kennedy was hurt this year too. It's just been
a lot of injuries to not only to the staff but specifically the rotation.
Yeah, the starting rotation. You lost 3 guys at halfway through the season, not for the whole season, but when you have injuries that prolong for 2 to 3 weeks,
mm-hmm.
That's in that time. That pitcher would have started 2 to 3 times, so that's 2 to 3 games where you had to get spot starts from guys down in AAA like Junis and Skoglund, mm-hmm. and that's why we're seeing this Travis Wood experiment. So,
it might work, it might not work. You never know, to be honest with you.
So if they're going to make the run for it, they're going to have to go out and get a starting pitcher.
And another team that kind of needs maybe 1 or 2 starting pitchers, but kind of is already solid in that area is the Seattle Mariners. And
yep.
With the Seattle Mariners, I brought up they were 48 even. The Royals were 45 and 47. Seattle 1.5 games back, and the Royals being 2.5 games back. And looking at not only Seattle right now, I kind of made fun of Seattle being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this hot take here and say they're going to make it to the playoffs, make it to the ALDS, which most likely they will face the Astros and ultimately lose. But right now, it kind of looks like my prediction is somewhat right in a way. When they started back up on the 14th, they swept the Chicago White Sox. Then once they faced Houston these past 3 days, they won the series 2 out of 3, but now it's kind of getting to the nitty-gritty. They're going to be facing the New York Yankees for a 4-game stint at home. Then they're going to be facing the Boston Red Sox on a 3-game stint at home. And then they'll get a nice little they'll get easier in a sense facing the New York Mets at home. And then on trade deadline day, we'll be at the Texas Rangers. But, of course, you probably already know how everything is going to go even before then. So it's going to be difficult. And I think this probably, just looking at it from everybody else's standpoint, it might be the hardest or the second hardest if you're trying to compare it to the St. Louis Cardinals schedule, or even Minnesota's or Kansas City's. But you have a team that's, even though the Yankees are winning, they're not winning at the moment. They've kind of slouched a little bit. I believe they're on I was going to
say their last 30, they're 10-20.
Yeah, 10-20, which is, 3 weeks ago it was the other way around. They were 20-10, and they're facing a surging Boston Red Sox, which they had that really, really laxing first part of the season in April into May, where it didn't seem like it was going to be the Boston Red Sox of last year, and now they're to it. And then you have the Mets, which they beat the Cardinals tonight, I believe 7-3, but they're kind of in a weird system of, are they willing to sell? Are they willing to stand pat? But what is the one thing, we've already kind of talked about it with pitching a little bit. What is the one thing for the Seattle Mariners to, what is something that they need if they need it, if they need to buy on the trade deadline?
We could talk about starting pitching, but they got Ariel Miranda with a 4.35 ERA, James Paxton with a 3.19, Felix Hernandez with a 4.20, and Sam Gav.
I don't have the. Hold on. Let me check the rosters. I didn't have the rosters in front of me.
But they got another guy, Sam G, for right now. With a 4.6.
Godjavio? If I can actually talk again. Gavagilo. I'm going to go with that.
Okay. And he has the 4.62.
Yeah. And
so,
he's 4.62. Okay. So keep on going.
So their only bad pitcher you can argue is Yaviani Gallardo with a 5.59. So if you want to argue that they need to go get a pitcher, okay, but they don't need to go out and get a top-of-the-line ace.
Mm-hmm.
Get a 3 or a 5 guy that's better than Gallardo.
Mm-hmm.
Their bullpen pitching is pitching well. So I think if what will make a difference for them, maybe going out and getting some sort of maybe a catcher.
Okay.
But Mike Zuino,
yeah,
he has hit 13 home runs, but he's hitting 233.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone else seems to be hitting all right, except for Gerard Dyson with a 246. And Kyle Seager is hitting 256, but he's never been a high average guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if what the Mariners would help them the most is maybe go getting a more offensive-minded catcher or center fielder, and then a low end of the rotation guy.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who won't have a 5.59 ERA. Bring it down around the 4s. And their bullpen has obviously pitched well. They got Edwin Diaz with a 3.13 ERA, James Pazos with a 3.44, which is the worst out of the guys with the most innings pitched out of their bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really say too much about this team not being able to compete. But I don't think they'll be necessarily selling, because I think they're kind of trying to go somewhat all in on it.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think they'll be selling too much. I think they're going to either stand pat or try to make a small kind of minor move for maybe a more offensive production.
And I mean that is quite possible. I mean, like you said, offense is key. And when they got 2 years back, when they got Robinson Cano and Nelson Cruz, I don't know about you, but I was like, all right, so Seattle was, I was like, all right, Seattle's finally being contenders here. We're going to see some really wild stuff in the West. And the past 2 years have just been, oh, it's going to be our year, and never happens. Oh, it's going to be our year, and it didn't happen. And it was just, it's been like that for the past 2 years, I believe, or 2 years.
Yeah.
And now it's...
And what usually has failed them is their starting rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've always had Felix Hernandez, but they've really not had much else behind him.
And yes, that is very much true. Because he's just been kind of the guy that's been running the rotation and now has just... I'm not going to say he has fallen from grace or anything, but he has shown a little bit of his age.
Yeah, he's getting to the point to where he's not going to have that same kind of velocity. So he's going to have to kind of evolve his game to be a little bit more of a control pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen guys like, look at Verlander. Remember 3 years ago, his fastball velocity was down 2 or 3 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then that following year or year after, he was Verlander, but not the same velocity, but better location.
Mm-hmm.
So, it takes time to adapt.
Yes, and it does. It really does. And, one team that has really kind of adapted in a way when we were already thinking, a couple of years, well, it's been 5 years, 6-7 years since this team was really, title contenders and then fell back from grace and then started to go back up, is the Texas Rangers, Seattle's rival in their division, and a team that they're 45-49. They're only 3.5 games back.
And I think you and I thought of them being at the second place of the division.
I believe so, because I believe I had them either at second or third with Seattle. I know Seattle and the Rangers were intermixed with those. And, really looking at it, looking at the Texas Rangers, they played your Kansas City Royals, starting back up with the second half of the season.
They took 2 out of 3 out of them.
2 out of 3. And then they went to Baltimore, and, you think you pick up some momentum, and they are on a 4-game skid. They lost the last game against the Royals, and now they're on a 4-game skid, which they've only scored 4 runs, and the Baltimore Orioles have scored 15.
And that's kind of been the Rangers' problem,
mm-hmm.
is that they're getting decent pitching out of their guys.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of guys with exuberant, really high ERAs,
mm-hmm.
except for Tony Barnetta with a 6.35 and 28 innings pitched, though.
Mm-hmm.
Their starting rotation is pretty solid. A.J. Griffin could be a little bit better for you, but he's only thrown 39 innings. So you don't have a guy on your rotation with above a 5 besides A.J. Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at what their batting's doing. They went out and got a guy like Mike Napoli.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's going to hit home runs for you, and that's what he expects. So he has 20, but he's also hitting only 203 with a 90 OPS plus.
Mm-hmm.
Then Rogner Odor gave him that big contract, hitting 214 with a 67 OPS plus.
Mm-hmm.
Joey Gallo, 21 home runs, but he's only hitting 190.
Mm-hmm.
So his OPS is at 810. Then you got Carlos Gomez, 247, 107 OPS plus.
Mm-hmm.
Shin-Soo Choo is only hitting 248.
Mm-hmm.
So their offense is the problem.
Yeah, and, you bring that up, and I'm like, all right, there's always going to be one guy that has, like, the most at-bats or plate appearances that is going to have a low batting average. Then Elvis Andrews came in with a 286 average with an on-base plus slugging at a 777. I guess wish him luck for that. But then it's like looking down the list, and it's just
it doesn't get any better.
It doesn't at all. And I mean, when you go down, at bat wise, David DeShields, looking at his batting average, is a 283, but he's only had just under 200 at bats. So it's just like what
their guy with the most at bats, Odor, with 365, is hitting 214.
Mm-hmm.
So you see where the problem lies. batting average is a pretty solid stat, just basic, but it can tell the tale of its team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening to the Rangers right now. As a team, they're only hitting .237.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and another thing is, too, they don't have patience at the plate either from those big guys like you brought up, Odor and Gallo. And, I mean, even Carlos Gomez.
Yeah, they're 10th in strikeouts in the AL.
And, Gallo is 115. Mike Napoli has 98. Odor has 94. Then Carlos Gomez has 86 strikeouts. So, and I mean, it flutters here and there with other guys too, but it's just like, man, they're about equal, almost over almost to the halfway mark of their at-bats to strikeout ratio, which is a bit ridiculous in a way.
Yeah. So if the Rangers are going to do anything, I don't think they're much would be a sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think they want to give up Andrews. They're not going to give up Nomar Mazara.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to call they gave Odor the contract for a reason. So if they trade anybody, I don't know who would take them, but Mike Napoli,
mm-hmm.
because he signed through just a 1-year deal for $8.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But what scares you with him, he has 96 strikeouts. 203 batting average, but he does have 20 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
So what could they get out of him, if anything? I don't know. But of the guys on the team, I think he would probably be best bet to get traded, because I don't think they want to trade Yu Darvish or Cole Hamels.
Mm-hmm. I think they just want to keep those guys, possibly build for the next year.
Yeah, because, you expected better production out of Odor and Napoli and Chu and Mazara.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't expect them to be hitting below league averages.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens in baseball. So you take a reset year and get it at next year.
Mm-hmm. And, speaking of resets, which is another one that I did a hot take with, and our last team on the fringe list is the St. Louis Cardinals. The team is 46-48. They're 8.5 games back from the wild card. But what makes this more interesting is that when it comes to just the division, they're only, I believe, 3.5 games back from the division. 4.5 games back from the leading Milwaukee Brewers. But what does this team look at, when they're, starting from the 14th to now? They've lost the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They lost 2 out of 3. And then they'll play the rubber game tomorrow with the Mets. They've already won 2 out of the 4. They lost tonight 3-7. They play tomorrow. And then we talked about how Seattle might have one of the hardest schedules to the trade deadline day. But then you look at the Cardinals and you're just like, it's going to be impossible, but everybody has to be on all cylinders. And you look at after the Mets series, they go to Chicago, play at Wrigley against the Cubs. Then they're at home for the next 7 days, but it's against the Colorado Rockies for a 3-game stint, and then the Arizona Diamondbacks, a 3-game stint. Pretty much what we're going to see right here is, are the Cardinals going to play against World Series contending teams at the moment? And it's going to be very interesting to watch this.
And it looks like they're getting decent offense production, batting average-wise. Colton Wong is having a solid year, finally. Granted, he's only had 167 at-bats, but he's hitting .299 for you.
Mm-hmm.
Jed Jerko is hitting .292. Tommy Pham is hitting .308. Molina is hitting .267. Carpenter is having a down year and only hitting .253. Dexter Fowler isn't panning out like you guys thought, hitting .244. And then you've had injuries with Steven Piscotty and Randall Gittrick.
Which I actually watched Randall Gritchick tonight, and I kind of brought it up earlier a little bit before we got back on from our break, that Grichuk kind of, he was actually hitting the ball, and then I was like, all right, 2 guys on, Randall Grichuk's up. What's going to happen here? And usually when I see Randall Grichuk hit, it's either a pop-up fly out or a strikeout. But he actually made contact, hit it right to the center, and hit a 3-run home run, which I was pretty happy about. But again, it's against Double-A pitching to a major leaguer, and he also struck out twice, by the way. But I mean, whoever it's whatever floats your boat with that. But you're right. Randall Grichuk's been injured. Stephen Piscotty's been injured. And also Grichuk had to go down to Single-A and meet with the batting guru, which we talked about a couple weeks back. And there's, looking at this team, it's been hit or miss. But if you look at those on-base plus sluggings, there's Matt Carpenter. Yeah, he's hitting 252, but he has that 250. What was it? 253. I'm using the St. Louis Cardinals statistic website.
And he has an OPS at 847.
Yeah, and then Yadier Molina, he's not doing so well, even though he does get on base and has nice slugging numbers, 712 on my end. But Jed Jerko, Tommy
859.
Tommy Pham, Colton Wong, Paul DeYoung, those guys, are actually have nice OPS numbers. And I think that's where I think that's where John Mozeliak has wanted to go with this. But this really isn't what the problem is for the Cardinals. And the problem is with relief pitching. And the relief pitching...
say their starting rotation looks pretty solid. They have every guy except for Adam Wainwright with a sub-4 ERA.
Which is actually funny. You say that, there's been moments where we're like, oh my God, the Cardinals have gave up so much runs from their starting pitcher. But then you look at it through Fangraphs, and they have the fourth lowest ERA at 3.77, and that's with as the major leagues at whole. So it's just like, what is really the problem? And like I said, it goes back to the relief corps. Look at it first as just the whole before we actually, pick at it. They have a 4.12, which is middle of the road, I believe, and with the numbers, yes. Middle of the road. The FIP is kind of the same, middle of the road. Their left on base percentage is over the 70% mark, which the higher it is, the better it should be, but it's not. I mean, that's, whole-wise. But then you have to look at it as individuals. You had Suwon, a guy that, was lights out last year, had a 2 ERA. Now he's throwing a 4.17 ERA this year. You have Matt Bowman, a guy that's been, a long reliever for the Cardinals. He's doing well. He has a 3.60. But then you go down. Brett Cecil, a guy that gave up a lot, even though his numbers really don't show it. I mean, he has a 3.55 ERA. He has a nice 8.29 K per 9 and a 2.84 walks per 9. But he's just been giving a lot up lately. A lot of key situations, especially last, I believe, Sunday when they faced the Pirates for the last game of that series. He gave up the walk to get, I believe it was a walk or a hit, so somebody can get on base, and then somebody hit the walk-off. Then you have Trevor Rosenthal, a guy that, can throw in the hundreds, having a 3.72 ERA. Then, Segris has done well, but and Tyler Lyons, I believe, is still on the disabled list, if I remember correctly. Sammy Tuivalala has been a guy that's kind of been good. He has that 2.25 ERA and 90.1 left on base percentage. Not as high K rate, but is also, he's been giving up, opportunities for the other team to score. He's been giving up hits, same as John Brebbia, same as Miguel Sokolovic, same as, well, I could say Jonathan Broxton, but he's gone. And, you know, that's where the weakness is. And this is where the Cardinals need to fix if they have the opportunity to do that. And, you know, if they're in the thick of it, they'll do it. But as a team that has been very conscious about their spending, I think it will be, if they're not close, they'll stand pat. And, of course, if they're, you know, close, they'll do something. They'll, you know, get Zach Britton or it's some type of relief pitcher. But for this Cardinals team, it's all been about relief pitching and not about the offense or starting pitching.
Yep. And that's really it with them. That's just what has hurt the Cardinals. And you talked about Brett Cecil. You know, he has a 3.55 ERA. He's only let up 15 earned runs all season in 38 innings.
Mm-hmm.
But you say key situations, and with relievers, that's what sticks in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we remember when they do really well, but we don't really remember that. You know, who knows that? I don't have his stats in front of me, but did he go 5 or 6 innings in a row without letting up a run?
Mm-hmm.
And then he just happened to let up a run this game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
having a 3.55 ERA for a bullpen pitcher is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. But it's something that you kind of don't remember when he gives up the go-ahead hit and the walk-off hit, and it's been as a Cardinals fan, it's been a ride, and
yeah, and that's what bad bullpen pitching will do.
Mm-hmm. And and you're right about that. That's what bad bullpen pitching will do. But that is it. That's our list. That's our fringe teams. And I think, when we talk next week, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna, we'll simplify it a little bit more. We kind of went on the overview plus some here. We wanted to get the movers and the shakers here, and some of the guys that are looking at the table and might want to come towards the table and put some money in and join the casino. Join the casino scene and see what happens. But as the trade deadline moves closer, the opportunity will get shorter for some teams, and some teams will have a bigger opportunity depending on what's going on. So that will be, that's kind of it for the MLBeers podcast. We already told you what we're going to do next week, and really to the end of the trade deadline, and of course we're going to have a review after that in 2 weeks. But if you want to get in contact with us, we have a Twitter at the MLBeers Podcast. We have a Facebook, which is MLBeers Podcast. We have a email at majorleaguebeers@gmail.com. If you want to just talk to one of us, I'm the real, it would be real AWS 13. And Phil, what is yours?
I'm at Philco816.
And we're also part of a podcast network too, which is the Tangent Bound Network, which hosts many podcasts, which are all good. Phil, you know it more than I do. Give them a little summary real quick.
Essentially, they have a very nice website lined out, and they have their channels listed out by category. So if you like listening to sports podcasts, go there, go to their channel. You can see what else they have to offer. They have plenty of categories, and for anything for you to nerd or geek out about.
And I think one of your favorite podcasts, which I haven't listened to yet, the Salty Language is part of that, part of the network too. So if that's pretty much it, I don't think I have really anything else. It was a good show, even though it was a long one for us, but we actually got done with it. And
we did it.
We're ready to rest. I'm ready to read some of my book or play out of the park baseball or watch Moneyball, because I've been wanting to do that for a while, ever since I've gotten the book and playing out of the park baseball.
There you go.
But Phil, you have a good night. I know you're tired. I'm tired. So we're going to end it here, folks, for the MLBeers podcast with your hosts, Andrew Sherman and Philip Corwin. As always, we say, win or lose, there is always booze.